I'm alive. Hello, Samantha Hannah. How are you?
I'm good. I'm actually going to plug my headphones in right now
Yes.
because
Because why?
sound might be
Okay.
a little better as I've got, teenagers in the house that are blasting interesting music right now.
Are they?
Yes.
You know what they're playing?
No idea. I don't
Okay.
even want to. Usually I'm up to play. Actually, both the girls have some pretty cool taste in music, but I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on out there today.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So are we going to knit and paint?
Look, I've even cast on, ready to go, the
Is that
beautiful pink.
is that the beginnings of a leg warmer?
That is the beginning of not only any leg warmer, but your leg warmer.
Yes, thank you. This is amazing.
Yes.
All right. And so I'm going to paint as well.
Okay.
While you knit.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to paint a hippopotamus.
Oh, good.
So something between that and that.
Oh,
So
wow.
we'll see if how it works. We'll just see. I just happen to have a canvas here, which you can't really see because it's my background, but that's fine.
Yep.
So Sam Hannah, how did you become spiritual?
Look.
Because you are a One Giant Mind meditation teacher,
Yes.
but you're also many other things. So what other things do you do?
So I am a One Giant Mind meditation teacher, such as yourself. I teach yoga. So, I'm a yoga teacher, and I really don't enjoy labels, but to give people perspective and understand what I do, I go under the title of wellbeing coach.
Mm-hmm.
But that just means that I really love and very interested in the study of the mind, and in particular stress, fatigue, the conditioning of the mind, which is why I love the One Giant Mind meditation technique, because that's Veda and that point of view and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm actually trained in ACT therapy, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, an arm of cognitive behavioral psychology. I'm not a psychologist though. Done some study in life coaching and various other modalities.
And what's your television station? It's the SWH something.
Oh yeah, so my business is Samantha Hannah Wellbeing Academy, but
That's right.
yeah, but I have a show that you on
Yes.
called Mind Gym and Matcha, the Mind Gym and Matcha show. So I have
Is it matcha is in the drink?
Yeah.
Okay. How come we didn't have matcha?
Well, I did.
Oh.
Oh, do you know what? I wonder if I didn't, because our interview was a little later, so I probably had a puka tea, which is what I've got right here.
Oh, right. I didn't even know that matcha was a thing on that show. Otherwise, I would have provided some.
Do you love matcha?
I don't have matcha, no. But if I had have known, I would have got some.
Well, I'm in a funny position with matcha. Let's go there for a minute. So
yes.
I don't drink coffee, and I haven't for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just noticing, because matcha is obviously green tea, ground green tea, and I use it to create matcha lattes, which I love. But I'm doing this study of Ayurveda with you at the moment on Dylan Smith's course, which I'm loving. And I'm bringing more and more awareness, as I've noticed us in isolation, into my nervous system on a really, really, really subtle level. And I'm wondering if the matcha is actually causing some of my sleeplessness or my very low-lying anxieties.
Mm-hmm.
Still got the caffeine in it.
Possibly.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm very curious about that right now.
Time to do some research and get rid of it for a little while.
Yeah, and just I'm all about experimenting and trying things out rather than
substitute the matcha with some acid.
Why not?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, drugs are the way, man. I mean, that's what led me here.
Right. So let's talk about that then. Yeah. How did you get here?
So, long or short story?
Oh, very long story.
The very long one.
Always long story.
Yeah, look, I knew I was coming on your potty,
How's
and
the knitting going, by the way? Do you
pretty
need to
fine.
do you need to look at it to do it, or can you do it
Yeah.
without looking?
Oh, look, I can do it without looking, but occasionally
Yes.
there's just this red. I'm trying to follow a particular pattern, and if I don't
Okay.
look, it's going to
Uh,
take its own form. But hey, maybe that's what it needs to do for you.
yeah.
Take its own form. How about
I'm
you?
just wondering. Yes. Okay. Well, let's go back to you said you knew you were going to be on the potty.
Oh yeah, hang on one second though. Are you painting?
I've done that much so far. It's not much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so look, I've always known and had great awareness to mindfulness ever since I was a very small child. I can recall being very focused and very present in things like activities like colouring in, and finding great joy in, probably even earlier than 5 years old, but in my early childhood, great joy in being very present to anything that I did. And I can sit and recall so many times, sandpit, when I've been in the sandpit, studying a leaf, looking at a snail, colouring in, all those things. And the other part of me that I was witness to at a very young age is my ability to love, sattva. So, very much, I fell in love very deeply for the first time at the age of 5. With to the point where I can recall the physical sick feeling that I had in my stomach. I was so in love.
Oh, with a boy.
With a boy.
With a boy.
Yeah, but the boy would have been probably 19.
Oh.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
So my father used to own a motorcycle shop, and I used to go down to the track because he raced bikes and stuff. So I was brought up in the motorbike world, and I remember him taking me down on this amazing man drove in on his bike, and he removed his helmet. He had this full head of curly, beautiful hair, and literally I fell in love, and my heart felt like it went into my throat. I felt sick. I can still recall it, and I remember almost seeking that feeling for the rest of my life in relationships. I wanted that level of love again. Didn't find it, just saying, never found it again, but
Yeah, right.
I love my husband.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but what was really curious, I found, is that I thought everybody was like that. I thought everybody loved that much and that freely and that deeply. But it turns out that that's not true. That's not life. And so I have had a interesting relationship with my own internal love and what I give out to the world, and it being met with the opposite. As we know, that's life. And I've always thought I was doing such a good thing by trusting and giving, but what I've learned over time is we do need to really protect sometimes who we're giving it to and how we're giving it, and realizing that not everybody is the same as us, right? Whether it be a positive or so-called negative thing, we're also different. And so a lot of my pain actually came from love. And
you mean trying to love people that couldn't receive it?
Yeah, and just I've always had my eyes so wide open to life. And like, I remember also in my childhood, I would have probably been about maybe 7 or 8, and we had this beautiful couple that lived next door to us, and they were elderly, and their name was Mr. and Mrs. Rose. Such a beautiful name, right? And I used to have these conversations with Mr. Rose. Mrs. Rose was hardly ever outside, but he'd be pottering in the garden, and I'd sit amongst, oh look, that's bad etiquette, isn't it, having my phone on? Let's just ignore that. And I'd sit amongst the rose bushes or the trees, and I'd just watch him, and then sometimes he'd see me watching him, and he'd just say hello, and then I'd have this little chat. And he actually said to me, he told me a story about how every night he went to bed, he used to say to his wife, he'd kiss her. He said, I kiss my wife every night, and I look her in the eye and I say, until we meet again. And, at 7 or 8, to take that in its full capacity, which is, oh my gosh, he must love her so much. And that is really beautiful. is now I know is probably quite extraordinary, but you know, we know love is our nature, so probably not that extraordinary. But I don't know anyone else that has a story like that to tell. Anyway, months went on, and one day I noticed there was a lot of people over at Mr. and Mrs. Rose's house, and it turned out that Mrs. Rose had passed away, and she'd passed away in her sleep. And I cried for weeks and weeks, because what was in my mind was, he would have said, until we meet again. And then she would have passed away. And I couldn't work out what that would mean. Would he meet her again, but somewhere else? And at that time I was just learning about heaven and what all that meant, because we, you know, animals die, so that's part of childhood life and the cycle of life, birth and death. And often we learn through elderly family members passing away and animals passing away what the death part is. So I'd lost my grandfather, and now I witnessed Mrs. Rose passing away, and animals, blah blah. But I've been brought up in a sort of a Christian faith.
Yes. And
I couldn't get my head around hell and heaven and this guy called God, and none of that anyway. So I was really confused as to what it all meant, and started to sink into this natural rebellion where I would just be pushing back against Christian, and I, no offense to anyone who is Christian and of Christian faith, I don't judge that in any way. But for me personally, it didn't resonate. I did like that dude called Jesus, though. I wouldn't mind having him over for dinner.
And what about that? Was it the fact that, like, you know, I don't want to preload the answer. So what was it about it that you were resisting or rebelling against?
Yeah, I think I can recall, I think the best thing for me to be able to intellectualize what was going on is through story. So I do remember, I went to a private girls' school, which was a Christian-based school, and I do remember my Christian ed teacher telling me that because my father is atheist, he was going to go to hell. And I couldn't work that out, because I was thinking to myself, my father is a beautiful, good man. And just because he doesn't believe in what you believe in, and this is me at 11, just because he doesn't believe what you believe in, why does that make him bad enough to go to this so-called hell place? Which, by the way, I don't really believe in. It doesn't make sense to me that anyone would be put down there, no matter who they are. You know, and then I used to sort of stare up at the stars and wonder, you know, what was out there. It was so big and mysterious. And to me, there's something out there that was bigger, way bigger than us. And the Christian faith itself seemed quite closed. So when I looked up at the sky and saw how vast and open it was, I've always been a stargazer, and then go to school and hear the Christian education and the judgment and how small it made me feel. I just thought, this isn't my path. This is not my path to spirituality, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I wasn't brought up that way, but I had experiences every now and then with, like, what's it called when you, on the weekend, you go to like a church.
Like a youth group?
Yeah, kind of like that. It was like that. But, and you know, you go, you know, make things out of paddle pop sticks and whatever. And it was sprinkled in with a little bit of Christianity, and I guess, you know, when you start asking questions and if people can't answer the questions, then it gets a little bit hard to, like you said, where do you put everything? How do you reconcile Jesus saying love unconditionally and you deciding only to love people that believe what you believe, or, you know, this kind of thing. So it's, I didn't have that experience, but I've still felt a resistance against organized religion from a young age as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is too, Dan. It's like the talent, and I'm feeling it rising up right now, I can tell you that. But the telling me what to think and what to feel. I've never been one that appreciates, I don't follow the rules, and I don't like to feel constricted or bound by things.
You must have got in trouble at school for that as well.
I was very much in trouble all the time. I was that girl, and actually unafraid to speak my mind. So here's another example. When I was in what we called, and when I was going through school, sixth form, which is year 12 in New Zealand, and in Australia I believe it's when you're 16 and it's the second to last year of college, whatever year that is for you.
Year 10?
Year 10, okay. And we were studying Shakespeare and Othello, and the principal was my English teacher, and she also happened to be a staunch Catholic. And she had very, very staunch ideas on things like abortion, and was at an all-girls school and drumming her beliefs very heavily down our throats, to which I loved at any occasion to make her rise. Because probably not the kindest thing for me to do, but how as a teenager. Anyway, so we were sitting in class and she started to talk about, this Othello and Iago and his, oh God, what's his name? Is it that, the character, is it that? I can't remember. You're going to have to do some Shakespeare study on the story. And the two main characters. Anyway, I was listening to her talking and I just blurted out that I thought that these two characters were actually gay. And because the way that she was talking about it, to me, it was this love story, this struggle between a man, which in modern times we might say is having a bromance, and that he wasn't jealous of the female partner. He was jealous that he couldn't be with his male friend. And I blurted that out to a Catholic, teacher.
Yeah.
And wow, you can imagine what happened after that. But it actually made me, I just sat there and I actually said to her, I looked her in the eye and I said to her, my beliefs might not be the same as yours, but can you just humor me and hear what I have to say? I could be wrong, and I don't know Shakespeare, and I might be totally butchering the beautiful artist that is Shakespeare here in his story, but this is how I feel. So let me talk. I just want to talk, and express myself. So I kind of have had that all my life. And
how did that go for you though?
It hasn't gone well. It didn't go well for the longest time. And I still get in trouble for fully expressing myself at times. But what's really interesting is how many times in our lives are we fully squashed when we want to speak our truth? And it makes it so hard for us to really truly believe that what we have to say is important and of value. And it starts with all the authorities in our life, from our parents and school teachers, and then the systems that we find ourselves in. They disallow us to really speak into our truth, and that's what makes me extra passionate about doing what I do and teaching what I teach.
And specifically, you're talking about teaching the youth as well?
Yeah, I love teaching the youth. That is one of my absolute passions. So part of what I'm able to do now is to go into schools and teach teenagers, or adolescents actually, so 12 to 25 is a group that I work with, and teaching them how to meditate, teaching them mindfulness practices, so a little bit of Buddha's teachings, as well as the Vedic worldview, without actually putting too much of a spiritual spin on it. I mind my language because I want it to feel inclusive, and I know there's a lot of religious groups out there that that there's a lot of infighting with whose religion is right and whose spiritual beliefs are right and all that kind of thing, and I don't want a part of that. I just want to open the minds of young people and say there is another way to think and be, and don't let society and the education system squash you down. Like, speak up, but be very wise about the boundaries that you do push. Because if the school has a standard around, for example, uniforms, and you have to wear that uniform, then don't try and show up at school in anything other than that, because you'll be met with suffering every single day doing that kind of thing. But if there's some kind of injustice that happens in the classroom, then you stand up. Like you speak your truth. You put up your hand and say, stop, I don't like it, don't speak to me that way, or you can have your beliefs, but these are mine, and those sorts of things. So I really treasure being the rebellious teenager that got in a lot of trouble, because now it means that I can understand the teens that I'm working with.
And it's interesting too that you mentioned going back to religion, with the kind of the indoctrination of this is how you should behave in order to go to some other place after you die, to get to some kind of promised land, you know, as opposed to having the direct experience in meditation, of being able to establish, and also this is my experience. I'm not going to project into your experience, but my experience has been that that heaven and hell is consciousness, is your own state. If you're in a state of suffering and you're ignoring why you're there and you're furthering down that path towards your own destruction, you're heading towards hell. And if you go the other way and you start to cultivate your inner awareness and expand yourself and, make the better choices, you're directing yourself towards heaven. And at all times we get to make that choice. Where are we going? We're moving in this direction or that direction. And from my experiences of, tapping into my own connection, own self-love, you have to assume that, and this is also, speaking to other masters in other traditions, through thousands of years, they've all said that the universe is all one thing and you're it, and realize that and embody that and let it come out of you. And they just sit there in eternal bliss and happiness, doing absolutely nothing but bubbling joy. And we all have that capability and we all have that capacity. And, when you see angry people trying to enforce rules and regulations to make you fit into their structure, and you just think, this isn't right. This isn't what this is supposed to be. Inside, this isn't what this was meant to be. This was meant to be a wisdom tradition, where embodiment was a part of it and direct experience was part of it. And over time it's been lost and been corrupted. And that's happened, through so many religions. And this is where, for me, meditation helps to have that direct experience. So no matter if you're a Muslim or a Christian or Jewish, it doesn't matter what your structure is. If you're having the direct experience of self, then it can apply to all of those different structures, and everyone can agree on it. We can all have a unity experience in our different structures. We'll be like, yeah, we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about the same thing, and everyone can agree, because it essentially is all the same thing anyway.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one of a couple of key points you said there, Dan, that I truly believe is one, the way that I was introduced into religion was the lack of I could not embody what they were saying. It didn't make sense. It didn't feel right in my body. I couldn't feel into any of the things that they were talking about, or I wanted to, if I ever fell pregnant and wanted to have the choice, I've got my own opinions on it, which I'm not going to express here in the podcast, but I just I want people to be in choice. I want to be in choice at all times, whatever that looks like. And therefore I wanted to be able to choose what I believed in. And so, yes, I believe in God. I absolutely believe in God. But how I define God, it could be universe, source, love, whatever it is. I absolutely believe in love. I absolutely believe in the universe and source. I believe, you know what I mean? Like it's all in us and it's all in everybody. It's all around us. And I get so the second part of what you said that I heard is the ignorance that goes with some of these fundamental religious structures and things. And I find it's just, shouldn't it be all inclusive? Shouldn't we, the teachings is love, and yet there are so many people within a religion, not saying the religion itself, but people that find themselves in there are so judgmental and ignorant, and therefore this is mine and this is my way of thinking. And if you don't think this way, and if you're not like me, then there's something wrong with you.
It's the right way.
Yeah.
And it's the funny thing, because when you start to question the inconsistencies, you come up to this is the only way, this is the dogma, and our God is the only God. But then if your God is that good, did he also make all the other religions? Well, you have to come to the conclusion that absolutely. And so if you can expand your mind to fit that into the picture, then you're going to say, well, maybe God likes to be worshipped in many, many ways, Anyway, we could talk about this forever, but let's move on.
So
how about you? Back to you.
Yeah, so after kind of the experience with school and Christianity, and you know, I then fell into the prey of relationship and understanding what that meant, and you know, I had a very tumultuous time in relationships in my teenage years, and also just I guess got really tired of consistently being knocked down for how much love I had to give in the world. I've always been someone too that loves knowledge and loves learning, and I've always been unafraid to share. So I think it's, you know, my right that if I learn something and I'm passionate about it and it feels good inside me, then I don't want to hold it in. I want to share that with the world, because it may also be someone else's truth and help them on their journey and their path.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got met with things like, oh, you're such a know-all, and who do you think you are? And so those sorts of limiting beliefs, what we call conditioning, started to really layer in my mind. And then because of the, you know, the logistic, or, you know, the different energy that I started to form inside myself, I met that I found that in life, and had some pretty horrible relationships and experiences. And I guess my first real awakening into me going one way or the other was with a relationship in my 20s that was very unhealthy. I had disordered eating from my teenage years as a ballet dancer, and that's an environment that can cause, if you're not a very stable-minded, you know, if not feeling stable inside yourself, then some of the feedback you get about your body can definitely cause disordered eating, and it did in my case.
Mm-hmm.
So I entered into a relationship with disordered eating, not an overly stable mind, a lot of very limiting beliefs about my self-worth, and found myself in a relationship that was very toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And probably met myself at what we commonly would call rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And had contemplated how I might take my life, and because at the time that seemed better than what I was in.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I say that with a smile on my face now, because you know, I've come out the other side, and I'm not smiling because it's painless.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most freaking awful pain I've ever experienced in my life. But that suffering, because I also then met that pain with deep suffering. I held on to it and really truly believed that I was that.
Mm-hmm.
But all of that is why I'm here. That's the smile you're seeing.
Yeah.
The smile you're seeing is that I've returned back to, you know, my true nature, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally okay with myself pouring out so much love into the world.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I could have got here without deep destruction first. You know, and actually understanding other people's natures by seeing it inside myself,
Yes.
by seeing the full scope of all of it inside myself.
Yeah. I love that. It's like once we've gone through the darkness, we've got a map then, and we can help guide others through it, you know.
But first we've got to learn how to shine light on our own darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not easy. You know, for anyone that suffers mental health, my heart is with you, and I fully get it. You know, I suffered anxiety, but I didn't know what that was as a teenager. I definitely now know that I suffered depression, which is all tamas, you know, all of those really dark shadow sides that if we let ourselves sit in there, that's what we become. And I certainly did. And so I found yoga at that time. I smoked weed to escape from my mind.
Yeah.
But I quickly recognized that when I smoked weed, I could escape the conditioning of my mind and get a taste for who I truly was. I just know that was the wrong modality doing that. And, you know, discovered other drugs as well. And one in particular you know, creates great ecstasy in us,
Mm-hmm.
became one of my favorite sources, which I now know why. It kept putting me, even though it was false, it kept putting me into the state to which I was born in.
Mm-hmm.
The young girl that was deeply able to recognize love within myself and knew that that's what my path, my dharma,
Mm-hmm.
was love. Like I knew that from a very young age, and those things kept reminding me, but I didn't know how to remind me without them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
So yeah, really, really ugly and dark and time, yet one that is an absolute gift at the same time. And then I met my husband, who I'm still married to today and have two beautiful young daughters with.
But just before that, you were saying you learnt yoga.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And
Yes.
you were, but as a kind of, I don't know where the timeline is, you learnt yoga, you were smoking weed and possibly dabbling in ecstasy.
No, not at all. I didn't say that. Just the drug that makes you feel this way.
Okay. So then, did that get out of hand? Would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Particularly the pot. So I was using the party drugs as a way to try and socially connect and have fun. And, you know, I was just trying to, I now know I was creating a false sense of fun. But the pot was used in a really bad and addictive way. I would get up in the morning and have a bucket bong. Like, you know, like I was serious.
Yeah.
And doobs, you know, all the things. Like we probably don't even need to go and promote that kind of thing. But I was really, really in there, and it was dark inside me.
Mm-hmm.
But I did find yoga, and it was back in the day. Like we're talking 20-something years ago here. I'll tell you, you know.
Well, how old were you? 3?
Yeah. I was 3. 20 years ago, I was 3. Yeah. I'm 23.
Yeah.
Love you, Dan. So, but it was pretty limited. Yoga in Wellington, where I was, Wellington, New Zealand. Actually, came across it in London first off when I was traveling at a very young 20s. But even wherever I was, it was very limited. It was new. It was just sort of making its way into the Western world. But there was something about it that was interesting enough that in my early 20s, I wanted to become a yoga teacher, but didn't know why, and did not follow it until my late 30s.
Right.
Didn't even contemplate becoming a yoga teacher.
But you practiced on.
But I practiced. I practiced, and not every day. Like maybe 2 or 3 times a week. I just kept dipping my toe in there, learning this thing called meditation, getting restless in shavasana. But then I learned Iyengar and Ashtanga, and learned that Madonna did Ashtanga. So I was like, oh yeah, if she does it, I'll do it, you know. Right. And used it in a unhealthy way, actually. So I used it in a way to avoid the emotions and feelings that I didn't want to feel, and bashed my body because, you know, it's a pretty tough form of exercise, and it's just another way to self-harm.
It's very rigid, isn't it?
Yeah, very rigid, and it has its purpose, and it's a beautiful practice, but I misused it. And I think, you know, we can misuse our spiritual practices as a way to avoid what we're supposed to be feeling into.
I just wrote a song today actually called Spiritual Bypass, so I'll release that one shortly.
Oh, please do attach it to this. Yeah, and I was definitely in that stage in a spiritual bypass for sure. But it was there, and I thank the universe for just planting a seed, because the seed never went away. And I think that's a beauty of when you know you've found the right spiritual practice for yourself, is that the seed is planted and it just grows. And when you're ready to meet it fully, it will arrive, and it's always waiting for you. So it's just, that was my external view into love outside of myself. I was, you know, every time I got on the mat, I just felt so much love and joy, and I still do today. And every time there was this beautiful, funny sounding music Indian music, playing. I'd be like, oh, hang on a minute, it's funny sounding, but man, it makes me feel good. I don't know why. All these sorts of things, little seeds.
Yeah.
But then I met my husband.
But we didn't finish that yet. So then you had the weed and the questionable substances that we shan't speak of, and then was there a turning point with that specifically?
Not at this time. No, not at this stage. No, not at all. I was still in in that horrible relationship, and I was in turmoil inside. It was just, it didn't wake me up. I would say the relationship that I had in my early 20s, where I got deeply depressed and very anxious, the fact that I could seriously contemplate taking my life was a massive wake-up call. That actually scared the shit out of me, So that was when I arrived back home to New Zealand, I became a real seeker, a genuine soul seeker, as they say. I was searching for something, and that's where the pot and substances came into play, because I thought, oh, is it here? When I'm here, I can escape the noise, and the noise is damaging. So maybe it's that, with a little bit of yoga. And I had some really beautiful friends, little hippie friends, and we always just sit around the fire and have deep conversations about life and stare at the stars together. And I thought, oh, is it that?
Yeah.
All of these little things. Fast forward, and then met hubby, and still sort of mucking around a little bit. But in that relationship, I started to really think about future, family, what that would look like, me as a mother. And me as a mother couldn't be that. I couldn't, the person I was being and how I was behaving, I didn't want to. Let's go back a little bit. I've always been into natural health. And so I wanted to make sure that I was the best vehicle possible before I even fell pregnant. So I guess truly my daughters saved my life in that regard. So my husband taught me how to love myself. So we often hear the saying, you can't love anyone until you love yourself. But I don't know if that's necessarily true, because if you don't know what self-love is, and you don't know how you love yourself, sometimes it is someone else that shows you the way and teaches you your worth, that then allows you to fall in love with yourself. But that still took a long time for me, because there was so much lack of self-worth. And
I think it takes a long time for everyone.
Yeah, it really does. Hey, it does. It's very
rare. The more you become aware of the places that you don't love yourself, the more you're aware that you don't know all the places that you don't love yourself, and then you almost feel like, well, it must be infinite, but it's not. But it can feel like, well, shit, how much else am I not aware of?
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
But
there's nothing more important than doing that work either.
God, no. Absolutely. It's got to be done. It has to be done for sure. And so we had a beautiful romance. We still have a beautiful romance, but of course in the normalities of what relationship is, it has its ups and downs. But
yes,
he's a beautiful man, and my daughters taught me what unconditional love really is. And that whole experience, being pregnant, giving birth to them, and being with them has that was a really defining point, absolutely incredibly defining point of my life. Like that was me. Being pregnant and giving birth was me in full power. I totally witnessed my full capacity. They were both natural births, and and I was in it, and there was no complaining, no nothing. I realized I needed nothing to get through a really painful experience. But actually that's not even the right word, because it's intense actually. But I didn't need anything but me to do that. Me and my daughters, both of them delivered naturally, and it was like the most profound thing ever.
Everyone that I've spoken to that has done that has said it's been a life-changing experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's had the support to do it naturally, and being able to go through that process of educating themselves on how it's going to happen, mentally preparing for it, preparing the body, getting everything right, having all the things in there in case something does go wrong, so they can, not put themselves in danger. But yeah, everyone that's gone through it has just reported that it's a life-changing experience.
That would have to be my greatest spiritual awakening. And it was so innate, because from the moment I decided that I wanted to get pregnant, everything changed. I cleaned up everything in my life. I was a smoker. That was gone. I gave up drinking. There was no substances. I was, I was very interested in sport all my life. So I've always stayed sporty. But and I practiced yoga.
What's your sport of poison? What's your choice?
Oh, I'm a netballer. So and I coach at a representative level, as well as high school level and stuff now. I'm still very involved in that world. Yeah, I love it.
You ever get into touch footy?
Never got into footy.
No, didn't like touch footy, nothing like that.
No, well, I tried, but I was really useless, so I gave that up.
Just stick with throwing elbows, little cheeky elbows. Yeah.
And apparently it's a non-contact sport.
Right.
Sure, right.
Very dangerous.
Yeah.
Where were we? Sorry.
I can't remember. Where was I going with that?
I diverted you.
You did. So birth. So every day, once I got pregnant, every single day I was practicing yoga, and I was talking to my daughters. So both pregnancies, I was talking to my daughters. I was finding myself going back to the childlike state of being mindful. I could find pockets of time where I could be fully focused and present. My music changed, my mindset changed.
Music is in the music you listen to?
Yeah, it wasn't angry and dark. Like I was a little bit of a mettler there for a while, and it all changed. It was softer. I softened. Just the whole thing was quite incredible, and it wasn't something I thought of. It was just something that happened naturally to me, and I should go back to early childhood as well. I used to walk around with dolls strapped to my belly, because I knew I was going to be a mother, and one of my biggest dharmas in life was I was going to be a mother.
Right.
And so I'd walk around all the time with a doll taped onto my belly and then put my jumper over the top and walk around like I was pregnant. And I had the best games in that regard.
Well, I've got an announcement.
Yep.
Just before I say it, I don't want you to get too excited. So I don't have a girlfriend, but I'm going to have a baby next year.
Are you going to have a baby next year?
Yeah.
Love it.
She doesn't know yet. I don't even know her, but that's fine.
That's okay. I love that you put that out there.
Yeah. Next question.
Yes.
You were saying?
Yes. So
where are we? Where are we up to?
So we're up to the bit. Being pregnant, spiritual awakening. That was the most natural and the most beautiful and insanely defining time of my life. Being pregnant, giving birth, and becoming a mother. Becoming the mother has been one of my greatest lessons in life, actually parenting the little humans that come out into the world. They teach us more than we teach them. They are absolute miracles, and they are my gift. And I'm just thankful and grateful every single day that they chose me. And that's how we talk in this house. I say that to them all the time. You chose me as a mother, and I'm so grateful for that. And so therefore, I'm here to guide and keep you safe, but I want you to fully express yourself, and you go out there and push those boundaries and stand up for yourself as two young women in the world.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, because the conditioning, the limiting belief that I think during the early stages of my kids being small hadn't been addressed though. So whilst, yes, I had this amazing spiritual awakening and blah, 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 as a mum and being pregnant.
Don't just blah, 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 blah about your spiritual awakening.
No, but you know what I mean. I'll come back to it. It's not blah, blah, blah. It's beautiful and it was amazing. But Yeah, you're right. We won't blah, blah, blah. I take that back, universe. I do
that's
not
the whole
blah,
point
blah,
of this. That's the whole point of this podcast. Is
I do not blah, blah, blah anything. No blah, blahs anymore.
Blah, blah, blah. Spiritual awakening, blah, blah, blah.
And we're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I hadn't addressed the important things. I hadn't actually allowed myself the space to recognize how much pain I'd actually suffered. And so it showed up again. And when it showed up in mighty fashion. And I decided that when the kids went to school, I would be at home with them until they went to school. And then when they were at school, I'd give myself that 9 to 3 kind of period to find a passion and something I really loved. So I became a personal stylist. So I lived in a completely different world than what I live in right now. I was a fashion stylist and a personal brand strategist, and I created a very successful business. And from there, I ended up having co-hosting a couple of small TV shows, and I wrote for magazines, and I was traveling the country, and I was front row of fashion weeks and speaking, throughout New Zealand and across in Australia. I was being featured on radio stations, all the things that, nice for the ego. Yes. And look, what I loved the most was all the things I could do to help the women and the men that I was working with. And what I loved is the inner work I could do, even though they thought I was there to address them. It was the deep conversations and that's what I loved. But the fashion world and the TV world, which was, I grew up thinking I'd love to do that. And I used to practice my reporter's voice into a hairbrush when I was younger. And my maiden name was Thomas. So it'd be Samantha Thomas, One Network News. I'd go around doing all this, stuff because I thought, being in the TV world would be pretty amazing. But when I got there, it wasn't my world, and I found the fashion world a stressful place to be. I do not in any way judge that world. I think it's got some beautiful artists and some incredible people, and I do love fashion. So I don't want to spend time, and I'll never spend time criticizing the world. It just wasn't for me. And neither was the television world. And so I found myself, though, this is the main point of all of this. I had the TV shows, writing for magazines. I was being a mother. I was running a business. I was going around the country running seminars. I was playing Premier level netball, and I was also training for the half Ironman, all at the same time. Like, right? Yeah. Like, who does that?
Yeah.
But I was really trying to show the world that I was here and I was someone, and I wanted to be seen and heard so desperately, without knowing that actually it was because of the deep pain that I had through childhood of not feeling seen and heard. So I did everything all at once. Yes. And I did it in hindsight. I know I did it to please people, to show, look, I've got a fancy job, and look at me, I've ticked that goal off, and I can do it all at once, and I don't have a nanny, and I don't need a nanny, because I still really want to be at home with my kids, but I want to be a career woman. Oh, and I want to be a half Ironman athlete. So needless to say that I suffered from great anxiety at that time. My nervous system was shot. I had adrenal fatigue but didn't know it. It was always sort of unwell, chest infections, so throat chakra and heart chakra was always in trouble and affected. And I broke in really stylish fashion, shall we say, excuse the pun, and found myself in hospital with a pretty severe, what I got told was a panic attack. I actually thought I was dying. And I'd come off a day of filming, and I'd gone out for dinner with a dear friend of mine. I hadn't had any alcohol. We had good food, but I got up from the table that night and felt really dizzy, and almost fainted in the restaurant. Covered it up very well though, because apparently my friend couldn't tell. I was sweating and everything, but apparently he couldn't tell. Went outside, got some fresh air. Thankfully he picked up the bill for me, which I'm really grateful for, because I couldn't see properly everything. I'd lost vision, caught my breath enough to tell him to go home. I was so embarrassed. And I got in a taxi, got back to the hotel room, and that's about where my clarity of the situation ends. All I know is that I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was going to vomit, and I called my husband, who was in a completely different city, mumbling something, to which an ambulance was called. I was taken off to hospital, and then came round to all these lights and noise as I lay in hospital going, what the fuck just happened? Like, how did I get here? Why am I here? Oh shit, like, let's meet another rock bottom right here.
Yeah.
And the doctor, I had a drip in my arm.
Was there any other signs before that? Or you just like full power and then
I was full in. Yeah, full power. Like, I know that I had low-lying anxiety. And yeah, I actually had a couple of funny little turns that we all thought that it was hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugars. And so kind of like a diabetic reaction, and I had a couple of tests done on blood sugars. And even when I was a teenager, my mum's a nurse, so she used to take the low blood pressures. But what I found, and take my sugars, stuff like that. But it never met with the full scope of hypoglycemia, but it kind of presented that way. So that's what we all put it down to, these funny little turns that I'd have. But this one was massive. And I think even my hubby would have said on the phone, she might be having one of her like hypoglycemic turns or whatever. So they came expecting to find that. But when I came round and the doctor looked down at me, he actually told me that I'd had a severe panic attack and that I was suffering from anxiety, exhaustion, and dehydration. So I literally was shutting my body down. Like lack of awareness, 101 right there. I was shutting it down, and because I wasn't listening, it was just like, okay,
hit the off switch.
Let's just plant you on your ass in hospital on a drip, eh? We get the message now. And when I said to the doctor at the time, like, what do? I don't want to ever get this again. I never want to feel like this again. And he just kind of slightly scoffed, and he said, well, my recommendation to you is go and see your GP on Monday morning and get yourself on medication. It's like, ooh. What? Like, really? Where's the compassion? And that led me on the journey as to why I'm here today. That one moment, it was my absolute turning point into, I've had enough. This can't go on. I cannot bring two beautiful girls into the world, showing them that this is a woman in her power, because this is not a woman in her power. I was thinking that by having a great career and being on TV and still parenting young girls was a way to show the girls how to be in the world, like, be a powerful, independent woman. Oh man, did I get that wrong? That is not the right way. And we've had lots of conversations about that since, that I don't do what I do. Don't do what I say, like, and don't do those things because they are, I just threw my knitting on the floor. That statement was so powerful, my knitting's gone on the floor. Gone with you.
How did we ever think we were going to be able to do art and knitting while having this conversation?
I don't know. I don't know, but we did try.
It's not possible. Yeah, we kind of like tried. That's my, where is it?
Where is it? Where's it gone?
Nah, too bad. So what did you do? How did you change that?
So I decided right there and then, the very next day, that I needed to take action on changing how I was living my life. I knew medication wasn't for me. I have no judgment for anyone that chooses to take medication, by the way. If that's what you feel you need, then you do that. There will never be judgment from me. For me personally, I knew inside myself, that was one feeling I had that was very, very strong. I did not need medication to get better. I needed to change my lifestyle. I needed to look at what was going on internally, particularly in my mind. I had this innate feeling that I was going to be okay. I just didn't know how to get there. And so I asked a lot of questions. I asked my GP. No one ever, not one medical person said try meditation or go to yoga, like they do a little bit more these days. But that was only, oh goodness, that was maybe only like 7-8 years ago. It's not even that long ago, but nobody recommended anything alternative to dealing with this. So I went on my own quest, and I experienced everything that I could that was alternative and different, that took my fancy. That was like a, what's the word? It's like it was so alluring. And if it felt that way, I was like, I'm going there.
Yeah.
Charming. That's it. If it was charming, I was there. And so, you know, it took me on this amazing and incredible and rich journey that matched the same spiritual awakening experience as being pregnant and giving birth and being a mama.
Right.
And so, you know, like that's Shakti. Right there, like, you know, giving birth naturally and being a mama, like, God, was I in my power. You know, on our retreat we talked about the Kundalini rising. I had that experience in my first daughter's birth, for sure. You know, and so calm and so in my power. And as I was going on this journey, I could just see the dial winding more and more into what I was supposed to be doing in life, and how all of my pain and suffering had led me to this point. And yeah, it was just like, it was incredible. And then I got introduced to the Vedic worldview, and you know, studied yoga. So the Bhagavad Gita was part of my literature when I was doing my teacher training, and the sutras, Patanjali sutras, and then any spiritual book I get my hands on, the Course of Miracles, and all the things. I just wanted to look at it all with an open mind. And I even revisited the Bible, and there's some beautiful psalms and passages in there that actually speak similar things to what's in the Course of Miracles, what's the Vedic worldview, and Bhagavad Gita, all of it, you know. So I feel like but I really truly feel like I arrived home to myself when I met Johnny Pollard at New Zealand Wanderlust about 5 years ago now, and he taught me the One Giant Mind technique, which we're now both teachers in, and that being technique, which, you know, comes from the Vedic tradition and teachings. Oh man, I think Johnny probably thought I was a real weirdo that day, but he taught me how to meditate, and I broke. Like, I just, something shifted dramatically internally. And it was just, Johnny has taught me not to say too much. I have to now say so much. It was so much at one time, so much love inside myself burst at one time, that it all came out. And all I could see with that major stress release was actually my grandfather, who I saw take his last breath. So I had the privilege of being there with him when he died, me and my sisters, my mum, and a couple other family members, and, you know, holding his hand and being there as he took his last breath. And whilst it was beautiful, I also found that quite traumatic. So that's who I saw. When I was learning this technique from Johnny. We're in Taupo. It's a very spiritual, beautiful part of New Zealand. There was birds. We're in nature. His voice is magnetic when he leads a meditation. And I went deep. Like, I had no problem sinking into being like that. But poof, like, it was like bang. What the fuck is this? What is this? And with all of it almost unraveled like this. And then I saw my grandfather. And so all that came out of my mouth when I went up to Johnny afterwards, and I was blubbering blubbering, standing in front of him going, I don't know what just happened, but this is all I've been waiting for all my life. But the thing is, I think I'm grieving my grandfather, but he died. Like, it wasn't even making sense. And he just put me in for a big cuddle because, of course, he knew.
Yeah.
He knew what I'd experienced. And later, you know, after listening to his discourses for 4 days after that, and having the privilege of sitting on a beanbag next to him over that time and just picking his brain, I quickly worked out that I'd literally arrived home back to myself.
Yes.
And I actually looked him in the eye that Wanderlust, and I said, I want to do what you do. One day, if you ever teach your technique, I will be your student, because I want to do what you do. This is amazing. And here I am.
Beautiful.
Yeah, here I am.
Yeah. And how do you, I was going to say, how do you find people receive the teaching when you pass on how to teach meditation?
Yeah, it depends. I find that anyone that I connect with in the yoga world has got some understanding and can meet that, you know, where they are, and have some perspective on the spiritual part of the teaching. They understand the language around it, the sitting in stillness. They've had some experience of it. When someone has never meditated ever, I'm very mindful of the language I use. You know, that's one thing that we've been taught, right, is to only.
Do you have, because obviously when you were taught to meditate by Johnny, you were what they call ripe for the picking.
I was.
And so do you sometimes feel the expectation that you want someone to have that same experience a little bit, you know?
Actually, no. I think that's another gift of mine, is that I am really good at meeting people where they're at, and I can pick up pretty quickly if someone's ready to go there and are right for the picking. And those that are, you know, coming to me purely out of stress.
Yes.
You know, and meeting them without it. So like an executive, for an example, I've taught a few executives now from the corporate world how to meditate, and busy, and where's the structure, and how long do I have to sit here for, and meeting them at that place.
Yeah.
Right through to seeing myself in students and being able to meet them there. And and all experiences are beautiful, right? It's just as soon as you teach the technique and you can see them go, this thing. Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
So much.
Yeah.
So much, not too much, right?
So much, not too much.
Do you have, I think we're going to wrap it up, because we're going to wrap it up. But do you have a favorite spiritual wisdom or quote?
I often find myself thinking the saying, "This too shall pass." That comes to my mind a lot as a gentle reminder that wherever we are and whatever situation we find ourselves in, it's not permanent, and it will shift through. And so this too shall pass is probably one that I reference a lot.
Lean on a little bit.
Yeah. And say a fair bit. Yeah. That's what comes to my mind right now. Ask me again tomorrow. I am a woman. I have the right to change my mind, Daniel.
Of course. And infinite capability too, as well.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap it up?
No, I don't think so. Just thank you so much for allowing me to share my story and be here talking about spiritual awakening with you.
Thank you as well. And thank you for facilitating our other chat as well, which was lovely.
Oh, yes, that was fun.
Yes.
You're fun. I like talking to you. But I don't know what's happening to my knitting, because that's kind of like...
My legs are going to be cold this winter at this rate.
I know. Well, I don't even know how I'm going to get them through to the post anyway. Goodness. How are we going to get them?
Nothing leaves New Zealand.
No, and nobody can come in, sadly.
No.
Hopefully that'll all loosen off soon.
You know what happens when you separate? You're going to create a new species.
Oh, no. What's that gonna look like? Is that gonna be the platter
Hippopotamusi?
Yeah, that one.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing, and maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for having me, Dan. Anytime you want me back, I'll come back.
Sweet, weekly.
Beautiful. Okay.
Bye. Bye.